So, day 2 has started. It's Monday now. Yesterday was Sunday. I have the week off from my normal day job, so that means I get to work on this all week, which is actually very exciting. I've been waiting a while to get cracking on this one because I knew the floors were in need of a lot of help. But today I have to probably make sure the floor pan for the front driver's side does still fit. Not that it'd be any different than it was last night, but I'm going to check it one last time. I'm going to mark the holes for when I drilled spot welds so I could spot weld it up to the unibody frame rail and then figure out how I want to, well, I'll do the same thing for drilling spot welds, so I can weld it along the outside still for the inner rocker panel, and get going on that. Let's take a look. So as was the case yesterday, this is how the front piece of the floor pan will fit. It covers most of the area that I had to cut out. I did decide to order a rear driver's side floor pan, as this is too far gone to for me to really want to make my own panels to fit in here. I still could, but I decided to just pull the trigger and get another floor pan. So that should be here about the middle of the week. I ended up getting one of the speedier shipping options to make sure I could get it here this week. Overnight shipping was $78, which is why I didn't go with that option. I got one of the more expensive but cheaper than that options. And I got all these panels. They're all key parts panels, but I bought them all from 4wheelparts.com. If you're close to one of their stores, you can pick stuff up in store, but there's not a store close enough to me, so I have to ship them to me. So anyways, what I'm going to end up doing is marking where the unibody frame rails are, so I can drill holes all the way down the panel and spot weld it to the frame rail itself, or unibody frame rail. This tool is just the normal air flange tool. I bought this from Harbor Freight, if you're wondering, and its only purpose, or well, it has two purposes really, but all it does is it puts a flange in your piece of metal that's a 1/16 of an inch deep, which will be the right thickness or the right depth for all these panels. It's all 1/16 inch thick. So hopefully you can see that, but it puts a flare in it that's a 1/16 of an inch thick, and then if you flip it over, it's also a punch. So it punches a nice perfect hole for you to be able to spot weld in. So, obviously it won't work on this big panel because there's no way to get this tool in there to work. But that will work along the edge over here, and along this edge over here I could put a punch that I could weld with. Now, I do also have to consider how I'm going to get the inner rocker panel over here, as the rocker panel is two pieces. So I need to figure out what I want to use off of the new inner, and I'll end up using the entire thing. That'll fix this hole over here. But I need to get all three pieces of metal over here, because this is what's left of the old inner rocker panel. This is where it overlaps with the A-pillar that goes up over here, and then of course it all needs to also overlap and get mushed together with the new floor pan. So, I'm going to do a little bit of thinking and then execution. So, as you can see on this side, hopefully, I have drilled holes to make spot welds with. They're 3/16 inch big, which is the same size as my air punch will do, which is why I went with 3/16. and they're an inch apart all the way along where the unibody frame rail will sit. Being an inch apart is, I guess, overkill, because from the factory it looked like there was maybe one every 6 inches or something like that. But overkill is good, right? Hopefully. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I just noticed the fact that I missed one, but obviously, like where this hole is and this hole is, I can't put a spot weld there. I believe this area right here is where the seat bracket is supposed to go. Obviously I need to make another one of those, and then along this lip over here I'll have to put some 3/16" holes with my air punch, which I'll show you when I get to that. So, I'm going to give you a quick just demonstration of how this air punch works. You just simply pull the trigger and it, pulls in the top plunger up there. You definitely don't want to get your finger in there, it's got quite a bit of power. So, I'm going to make some punches all along this lip right here, about an inch apart, just like I did in here.
Why does he think this is okay? I think he's just being a douche. You think so? Is he trying to make her jealous? Do you think maybe he really does want her? You know? 978 text. My best friend and my husband text back and forth. Are they having an affair? Who should she ask? The husband or the best friend?
Well, if they're having an affair, no one's going to tell you the truth.
Yeah, well, of course. You gotta, get what you got.
So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm not sure how well it'll work, given that this is actually got a lot of curves to it. I'll be forewarned, I don't know if you really have to make them all 1 inch apart, or if it's a good idea to do it on this curve. Anyways, I'm not an auto body mechanic. I'm doing this in the driveway, how I think I should be able to do it, or should do it. So, none of this is a Bible or a how-to guide of how to replace a Cherokee floor pan. But I'm basically going to end up trying to do the same thing over here. We'll see how it turns out. Alright, I've triple checked everything that I think I should triple check. I think I'm ready to weld in my new panel up here. I have all my holes drilled. I ground the, I've ground all the edges off of the ones that I drilled. The punches were nice and perfect. All of the metal in here was ground down clean. Now I did use weld-through primer. I know if you do research on if you should use weld-through primer or not use weld-through primer, you'll find 50 different answers, and half people will say yes, half people will say yeah, no. I decided to use it, but that's neither here nor there. So, a few things that you do have to do is make sure that when you are welding that you push the metal as close as you can to what it is you're welding. So if there's any gap, then it might even get worse once you start welding, because of the heat, will bend the metal whichever way, depending on which side the heat's on. So it's easier if you have two people to do this, because you can really push down on the stuff, but I'm only one man today, so I'll have to do it all myself. A few things that I've learned is that, you know, start on this end and do some down here, because the metal will turn and twist on you as you're applying heat to it in all the different spots. So what I'll end up doing is putting spot welds down here, then I'll do one way up in the front, then I'll do some in the middle, probably put a couple over here, then just continue all the spot welds as I go. Definitely make sure you have your wires up out of the way. This wire over here is just zip tied to my clutch disengagement lever. I'll probably pull these up as much as I can and probably put one of my weld sleeves over it or something like that. I do have the battery and the alternator disconnected. Again, if you talk to somebody who does a lot of welding, they'll argue that you don't have to do that, because where I'm going to ground to is going to be right here in this vicinity, so the electricity is only going to flow from my gun to the ground in this area. But as a precaution, I always unhook it anyways. So I'm going to hook up my ground and start burning this floor plan in. I'll probably check it one last time again, just because once it's in there, it's in there. So let's start. Alright, gas is on. We're grounded. I have one of my weld sleeves held up with fabricator's tape over there. My other weld sleeve I'm wearing, obviously. I have the welder set up to the right amperage and wire speed for 16-inch thick. That'll vary from welder to welder, so take a look at the inside of the cover panel. But let's see how this goes. Apparently I don't have a good ground. Alright, I have the panel all welded all along both sides of the unibody frame rail, and then I have it spot welded along here where the A-panel or panel comes down to meet the floor. Next, what I have to do is push these pieces of metal over here together, because there's a decent gap, and then I have to make some pieces to fill in all of the other parts that I have to cut out. In order to do this, there's a few tools that I had to use. Obviously, there's these vice grip style things that'll just squish sheet metal together. I had to use that for up in the front to get the metal to bend down so I could meet the unibody frame rail with the floor itself. Then the hammer became a very good friend too, and sometimes a punch to massage the floor to match the unibody frame rail. So what I'm going to do now is use this to squish those pieces of metal together, weld along here, get a couple welds up over here. I'll have to make a couple really tiny pieces that fit into here, maybe fill the gap in with some weld. I'll see how that goes. And I have to make a decently big piece over here with a weird bend in it. But it's coming along good, actually. It's nice and solid. Should make the Jeep feel much more solid than it did before. You know, when I drive the first time I'll tell, but I have a feeling it was probably kind of wobbly feeling, being that there wasn't much floor over here left. This is a unibody vehicle, so to be expected. It is very, very stiff. So, we continue. Unfortunately, you just missed the welding sequence that I did. I was able to spot weld all these with that clamp in place, and then I undid it and had to hammer this in. There's one over here. I blew a hole through this panel over here. I'm not a body guy, no expert at bodywork, so it happens. But I got a couple more spot welds I can get over here, and then I can get up in the front. Alright, I got my spot welds over on the top where the transmission tunnel is. Next up is to fill this fist-sized hole, or 2 fists this way, and then fill the hole up next to my clutch disengagement lever, my brake deployment lever, and my throttle increasing lever. I'll catch you then after I make the patches. You've seen me do it before. I'm going to pretty much do it again. Just going to mark out with cardboard, transfer it over onto a piece of metal. I've got plenty of 1/16 inch thick around. Then I'm just going to weld it in. And that'll bring part 2 of this adventure to a close. Because I ended up filming much more of the making of that panel, I ended up having to break this second day into 2 spots, and I'll probably end up, well actually I'm not really sure what I'll end up combining with the next set of day 2 videos. I might include some of day 3, I might not, I don't know, we'll see. But be sure to check us out on Facebook, link is in the description. Like this video, subscribe, leave us a comment, and no matter what, get out there and do something.